You guys know what the best part about northern Alaska is, right? It's the fact that you never really have to go there. But if you're looking for the only place on Earth with less sunlight than your mother's basement, then the little town of Barrow just might be for you. The people here are used to dodging polar bears, but now they'll be fighting for their lives against an entire army of vampire freaks that want to tear them limb from limb, and before it's over, the sheriff's gonna learn that the only way to fight the monsters is by becoming one himself. Join us in covering a cult classic and break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat the Alaskan vampires in 30 Days of Night. These people have no idea that they're all about to die. Somewhere deep in the wilderness of northern Alaska, a strange man arrives from a ship anchored just off the coast, wandering through the tundra until he comes home to the remote town of Barrow. It's their last afternoon before the Earth's tilt causes the sun to dip below the horizon, and it won't be coming back for another 30 days. That's where we find Sheriff Eban and his deputy Billy in the middle of investigating some weird activity. It started when they found an entire pile of burned up satellite phones on the edge of town, and now they've just received a call about an attack at the dog kennels. Over back at the station, he gets another call about an incident at the town's utility plant. This time, it looks like somebody destroyed the tour guide's helicopter, but nothing could ever prepare him for how bad things are about to get. While he's busy at the plant, a worker at the town's telecom station hears some strange noises coming from outside, and as he gets up to investigate, the building suddenly loses power. Confused, he heads outside to see what the heck happened, but that was his biggest mistake, and he doesn't get far before he's completely surrounded by a group of shadowy figures. All of a sudden, one of them leaps onto his chest and sinks its fangs into his throat, as a pack of bloodthirsty vampires descends upon the town. Alright. This sheriff's about to have a worse night than Leon Kennedy's first shift in Raccoon City. I mean, he's trying his best to keep things under control, but what he hasn't realized is that these events are all connected, and they're a sign that something much worse is about to happen. So first, we've got the burned up phones. Now, as the sheriff pointed out, normally people steal phones to either use them or to sell them. And if this was a prank, then you'd expect the scene to be a lot more chaotic, right? But these phones were deliberately destroyed in an organized fashion. And if we rule out the other options, then the only logical conclusion is that somebody wants to cut them off from the outside world. Next, they attacked the town's sled dogs and sabotaged their only helicopter. And it might seem like there's no connection here, but actually, there is. Now, the attack at the kennels was done with a knife, so they can immediately rule out wildlife, and the owner says that he has no beef with anyone in town, so it wasn't personal. But it all comes together after finding out what they did to the helicopter. Whoever it was specifically targeted the throttle and the rotors, which are the two most important components for the helicopter to fly. The reason why this is such a problem is because Barrow is one of the most isolated communities in the world, with the nearest town being 80 miles away through the frozen wilderness, which, there's no roads to get there, and it means that you can't drive in or out, so everything comes either by plane or ship, and now that the airport's closed, the sled dogs and helicopter were their only form of transportation, you see. So when you put it all together, it's obvious that whoever's behind this is trying to leave them with no way to call for help and no way to escape. Now, if Eban figured this out, the first thing that he would want to do is start gathering reinforcements. I'd call his deputy, the mayor, the utility manager, hell, even the town doctor, and let them know that we might be under attack skis. Then it's time to gather up the armed volunteers and send them to protect the town's critical infrastructure, like the main generators and the telecom station. They should have their guns, flares, and snowmobiles ready in case of trouble, and if a group gets attacked at one of the facilities, then they can send up a flare to call in some backup. Now, of course, figuring out that they're dealing with vampires is going to change everything, but if they put up a good fight, then they might decide to move on and target another town. Back in town, the stranger heads to the diner and takes a seat at the bar, where he starts demanding that they bring him a bowl full of raw meat. Suddenly, he reaches across the counter and grabs the waitress by the arm, but the sheriff walks in and tells him to cut it out. He can tell right away that this guy is up to no good, but when he tries getting him to step outside, the man jumps up and gets right in his face, which is when the sheriff's estranged wife, Stella, steps in, but as he spins around to attack her, the sheriff pushes him down and gets him in handcuffs. He ends up giving Stella a ride back to the station, where they take the creep and stick him in the town's only cell. The whole time, the man keeps making these pretty weird comments about how something terrible is about to happen, but they can't get much else out of him for now. Meanwhile, a group of pipeline workers are headed back from their shift when something grabs one of them and drags him away into the darkness. Stunned, the others stand there wondering what the heck just happened, until suddenly the man's body drops down from above them with blood pouring out of his throat. Terrified, the girl takes off running, but she's the only one who manages to get away. It seems like things are just starting to quiet down when the sheriff's grandmother, Helen, notices that they've lost their internet connection. The sheriff realizes that the phones are down as well, and he's just about to go investigate when the power goes out all over town. Pulling up to the telecom station, he can tell right away that the place has been sabotaged, but there's no sign of the worker until he spots a blood trail on the ground. And following it with his flashlight, he's horrified to find the man's severed head impaled on a metal post. Rushing back to his truck, he speeds back into town and starts warning everyone to get inside, promising to explain more once he knows what's going on. The citizens all head back to their homes, but they won't be safe just because they're inside. In one of the houses, this guy John and his wife are nervously watching TV when suddenly one of the vampires comes flying straight through the window and does a barrel roll over the kitchen table. John rushes to help, but by the time that he gets there, the vampire has already carried his wife back through the window, and he rushes outside just in time to see it dragging her underneath the house. Horrified, he gets down and tries to pull her back, but the vampire starts attacking him from the darkness, and there's nothing that he can do as it drags her away right in front of him. Okay, it looks like the bloodsuckers have officially started their attack, but the people in town still have no idea what's going on. I mean, they're not going to be able to protect themselves until they understand the threat, but these attacks actually tell us a lot about the creatures and their strategy. First off, the attack at the oil field tells us that they're not really ready for an open fight, at least not yet. I mean, they're waiting to target isolated groups, which means that for now, there's safety in numbers. So if the vampires do attack, then you can just use your friends as meat shields while you run for your life. But with no way out of town, you're not going to get very far. At the telecom station, the vampires left the worker's head impaled on a spike, but if they were trying to cover up all the signs of their presence, then they would have hidden the body. But what this tells us is that they wanted someone to find it because they're trying to make them afraid. But if the vampires had no reason to fear the humans, then they'd already be massacring the entire town. Instead of sending them to their homes, Eban should tell everyone in town to grab any weapons they have and meet up at the station to discuss their battle plan. They can't fit all 150 of them into the building, so they'll need to hand out walkie-talkies and split up into more manageable groups, sending some to the general store, utility plant, airport, and other important locations around the town. Once there, they should board up the windows and reinforce the doors, making it as difficult as possible for vampires to get in. I mean, it's not going to be enough to keep them out forever, so the goal is to slow them down until reinforcements arrive. And in the meantime, Eban should keep interrogating this stranger so that they can find out more about what they're up against. Back at the station, the stranger keeps mocking them until Eban's brother Jake gets frustrated and throws a plastic board game piece at the cell. Taunting him, the man says that he's going to use it to pick the lock, and realizing what he's done, the kid rushes over to grab it first, but as soon as he gets close, the man reaches through the bars and starts grabbing him by the throat. Luckily, the sheriff gets there just in time, and he doesn't wait for an explanation before shooting the man straight in the shoulder. Furious, he goes into the cell and cuffs him to the bars, demanding to know who else is out there, but the only thing that he says is that they're all going to die. Eban's clearly getting nervous, but he still needs to do his job, so with Stella volunteering as backup, they head out to search the town one block at a time. They haven't made it too far before they notice something in the road up ahead, but after checking it out with her binoculars, Stella starts shouting at him to get back inside. Turning around, they start speeding back in the other direction when all of a sudden, one of the vampires comes sprinting up from behind and jumps onto the truck. Shocked, Eban fires a shot through the roof, causing it to let out a high-pitched scream, but they're finally able to get away when Stella slams on the brakes and sends it tumbling into the snow. Driving back through town, they start noticing signs of chaos happening all over the place, and that's when they get a distress call from back at the station. Worried, they immediately rush inside, but by the time that they get there, it's already too late. There's blood all over the place, with no sign of his family anywhere, and the only person left is the stranger, still handcuffed inside the cell. Meanwhile, a group of survivors are taking cover in the town's diner, where they start trying trying to piece together what's happening outside. Somehow the sheriff's brother managed to escape when the creatures attacked, but it looks like Grandma Helen wasn't so lucky. At another house somewhere else in town, a gunshot rings out as a man tries to protect his wife from a group of vampires, but they're quickly overwhelmed with no way to fight back. Terrified, his wife screams as one of the vampires sinks its fangs into her throat, and putting his fingernail on the record player, they all let out a high-pitched shriek as Marlowe signals for the others to launch their attack. Okay, looks like just got real, and leaving an unarmed grandma to guard this freak in the cell was like the most idiotic thing that you could possibly do. Alright, so now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's talk about what they need to do in order to survive this. At this point, there's no chance of getting organized, so you're surviving on your own until things quiet down. Yeah, I mean, you can't really outrun them, so you need to hide and find a quiet place, like the crawl spaces underneath some certain buildings, basements, attics, where the hatch can be sealed behind you, you know what I mean? Isolate your damn self. For now, you'll want to stay away from any large groups of survivors because it's only a matter of time before the vampies find them. If you have to move, take it slowly, stay low to the grisound, and go from cover to cover. The vampires are going after panicking targets, so you can use any stragglers as meat shields while you blend into the background. Once you've found a safe place, you need to turn off all the lights, cover the windows, and unplug anything that might make a noise. As long as you're careful, you can wait out the first few hours until things quiet down, and then you'll have a much better chance of living to see another day. Within minutes, the entire town descends into anarchy as the vampires start massacring anyone else they can find. In the midst of all the chaos, Eban and Stella manage to fight their way to the diner where he's relieved to see that his brother is still alive. The others are looking for answers, but he says that first they need to find a safer place to hide. That's when this girl Denise mentions a boarded up house where they can all hide in the attic, and for now, that sounds like their best bet. While the others make their way inside the house, Eban and Stella decide to get more supplies, but they don't make it far before they run into some trouble. As they're speeding back through town, a group of vampires surround the truck and force them to stop. Just when it looks like they're done for, the town's snowplow driver, Bo, comes barreling down the street and takes out a group of the vampires with his truck, giving Eban and Stella a chance to get inside as they speed away from the rest of the horde. It looks like their supply run didn't work out, so their only choice is to head for the boarded up house where the other survivors are already hiding. Sneaking inside, they're relieved to see that the others made it there in one piece. They can still hear people screaming all over town, but for now, there's nothing that they can do besides stay put and try not to be found. Meanwhile, back at the station, the stranger is still cuffed to the cell when Marlowe finally comes to find him. Telling the man that he's done his job, he pulls him in closer before suddenly snapping his neck. The survivors in the attic are doing their best to stay quiet when this old man, Isaac, starts shouting for his wife, forcing his son Wilson to calm him down. They're able to keep him under control for now, but that's when they hear more trouble happening outside, and peeking through the window, Stella tells the others that the vampires are searching every house in town. A few of them want to run for it while they still have the chance, and it breaks out into an all-out argument that almost turns into a fistfight, but Eban gets them all back in line, saying that he has a plan. He thinks that they should get some supplies and then make their way to the utility plant, but they'll have to wait for the weather to change before they make their move. Alright, the survivors here are lucky to be alive, but they won't stay that way for very long unless they start making some pretty harsh decisions. Now, with the airport closed and no other way out of town, they've decided that their only choice is to stay hidden until the sun comes back up in a few weeks. And while that's not a bad strategy per se, there are still a lot of ways that it could go wrong. Like, first off, the town only has 152 residents at this time of year, and the vampires are already picking off dozens at a time, so at this rate, you'll almost completely be out of meat shields by day 3, and the vampires will only get more aggressive as they keep searching for whoever's left. To make matters worse, they've noticed that the vampires are already searching the house, so they might not have as much time as they think. According to the US Census, Barrow only has about 850 occupied buildings. So if the vampires split into teams and search one house every 30 minutes, then they would only need about a week at most before they were able to search every house in town. So while hiding in the attic works for now, it's not going to work forever, and that's only if they remain absolutely silent. But between the old man who won't shut up and the others that are constantly on the verge of panicking, it's really only a matter of time before sticking with the group gets them killed. Eban's decided to wait for the snow to cover their escape, and with blizzards happening like every 3 to 5 days this time of year, they shouldn't have to wait that long before a storm rolls in, but it never hurts to have a backup plan just in case. We've already seen that the vampires don't have to follow the usual vampire rules, but one thing still holds true, and that's their weakness to sunlight. Problem is, that sun ain't gonna be coming up for another month, but if these vampires are used to hunting at night, then it's logical to assume that they might still rest during the hours that would normally be daytime. So if they can't wait for a blizzard, then leaving first thing in the morning is their next best bet, because there's a good chance that the vampires might be asleep. Like, here's an idea. I would take Jake, Stella, and Bo and sneak out of the house one morning without telling the others. I know it's kind of brutal, but it cuts down on noise, risk, and supply costs. Yeah, so that way they'll have a much better chance of surviving until the end of the month. A full week goes by with no signs of anything changing until on the 7th day, this girl named Kirsten comes wandering right down Main Street shouting for help. The others hear him yelling, but when Eban peeks through the window, he realizes that the vampires are trying to lure them into a trap. He can't sit back and watch the woman be killed, so taking a revolver, he sneaks down from the attic and starts making his way over. Just then, a voice calls out from underneath a nearby house, and he realizes that it's his friend John, whose wife was taken by the vampires. There's nothing that he can do as they surround Kirsten and start tearing her apart. But while the creatures are distracted, he ducks across the road to the place where John is hiding. Helping the man to his feet, Eban jumps back when he realizes that he's already started to change, and backs away as the man starts coming towards him with a possessed look in his eyes. John pushes the sheriff down, knocking the weapon out of his hands, but he ends up getting tangled in a swing set, giving Eban a chance to grab an axe and bury it into his neck. To his surprise, he's horrified when John keeps attacking, leaving him no choice but to chop off his head with a series of brutal strikes. After the fight, Eban stumbles back to the abandoned house and collapses from an asthma attack, completely overwhelmed by how bad things have gotten. As the others rush to help, he explains that John was transforming into one of the creatures, and they're terrified to imagine what the vampires might do next. Later that night, Stella accidentally starts to doze off while on watch, giving the old man a chance to open the hatch and sneak out of the attic. Chasing after him, she catches the man just as he's about to walk outside, but since they won't let him leave, he asks if he can use the bathroom instead. Feeling bad for him, they decide to let him go out on his own, but then a few seconds later, they start hearing a few suspicious noises coming from behind the locked door. Stella gets it open as fast as she can, but by then, it's already too late because he's already opened the window and climbed outside. She tries to stop the man's son from going after him, but he pushes Stella down and makes a break for the front door. Hearing all the commotion, Eban sneaks downstairs to see what happened, but that's when they hear one of the vampires approaching, forcing them to hide in the bathroom as it walks in and starts searching the house. It's just about to find them when it hears Wilson shouting for his father to come back, causing it to turn around and go back outside. There's no real sign of the old man anywhere in sight until all of a sudden Wilson's grabbed from behind and dragged away to his death. Back in the attic, the others are all wondering what to do next when they hear one of the vampires banging around on the roof. Luckily, the creature moves on without finding them, and Eban realizes that there's a blizzard approaching, telling the others that they need to get out of there as soon as the coast is clear. Alright, now that was a pretty damn close call, and it needs to be said that Eban took a huge risk by going out to help that girl, but his fight with the undead neighbor revealed some pretty crucial information about how these vampires work. Most importantly, it's proof that they can be killed with traditional weapons, as long as you aim for the head. Good to know that they'll at least stand a chance if they ever have to fight back. So taking all that into consideration, the first thing that they should do is arm everybody with a weapon. Like Eban's axe and whatever guns they have are a pretty good start. But I would keep an eye out for any sledgehammers, machetes, hatchets, crowbars, chainsaws, shovels. I mean, pretty much anything that can be used to crush a skull or chop off a head. And if they need to improvise, they can create homemade spears using like broom handles, curtain rods, or even just broken furniture. And then upgrade them with kitchen knives or screwdrivers duct taped to the end. These should help them fight from a safe distance, and they can even use the vampire's own momentum against them if they leap in for a kill. But if we can chop off their heads, then it means that we can chop off other body parts as well. So if a headshot's not available, then it's still worth taking off an arm or a leg as a way to cripple them instead. It's also important to remember that anyone who's been scratched or bitten will eventually turn, so they need to layer up with thick clothing and make themselves like some improvised armor by strapping magazines, hardcover books, cutting boards, floorboards, baking trays, you name it, to their arms and their legs. That way they'll at least have some extra protection in case they're attacked. Now, with the old man drawing so much attention to the house, I mean, there's a pretty good chance that the vampires will eventually come back, making it even more important for them to move on at the next opportunity. But before going anywhere, they should use the window to plan their route first, like looking for any hiding spots along the way and establishing where they'll try to meet up if anything goes wrong. Instead of going all at once, they should travel in 2 teams of 4, with the first team moving from cover to cover in like short bursts, and then signaling when it's safe for the others to follow. I mean, that way they'll have the best chance of making it all in one piece. With the storm covering their escape, the survivors go down to the street and start making their way over to the general store, hoping to get some more supplies before they head to the utility plant. Leading the way, Eban goes in first to make sure that it's safe, but he has no idea that they're walking straight into a trap. At first, it seems like the place is empty, so he tells the others that it's safe to come inside, but while they're searching the building for any supplies, suddenly everyone goes quiet as they hear something moving around in the darkness. Reaching the back of the shop, they're pretty horrified to see one of the vampires feasting on a dead woman's throat, and in the chaos, it manages to slice Carter with its claws, but Jake is finally able to take it down while the others hold it back. They're incredibly lucky to be alive, but with the storm clearing up outside, it looks like they won't be leaving anytime soon, so their only choice is to sit tight while they wait for another chance. Eventually, Eban decides that they need to move on before the vampires find them. That's when Carter suggests that one of them should create a distraction, but before he's able to finish, Stella remembers something else that might help them out. It turns out that Eban's grandmother had UV lights inside of her house, so if the creatures are vulnerable to sunlight, then they can use her equipment to take a few of them out. It's risky, but they don't have any better ideas, so Eban volunteers to be the distraction while the others make a run for the station. Once everybody's ready, he runs outside and starts making as much noise as possible, trying to get the vampires' attention as he rushes to the old woman's house. It's only a matter of seconds before they're all closing in, but he's able to start the generator and get inside just in time. As for the others, they're quietly sneaking through town when a vampire leaps down from the rooftops and starts eating one of them alive, forcing his friends to leave him for dead as they all run for the station. And although they make it to safety, Stella's worried that her husband is still in danger. Across town, the vampires surround the house, and believing that they have him cornered, Marlowe gives his bride permission to finish the sheriff off, but as soon as she opens the door, he hits her with a blast of UV light straight to the face, knocking her back as half of her body is instantly burned to a crisp. Furious, the vampire sends his minions to take out the generator, but Eban uses the opportunity to sneak outside through the back door, which is when Bo comes ripping through the town in his tractor and starts taking out one vampire after another with the giant spinning blades. Using his shotgun, he holds them off for as long as he can, leading them through town until he crashes straight through a building. And with nowhere left to run, he waits for the vampires to get close before dropping a lit flare onto the box at his feet, causing a massive explosion that sends him flying straight through the window. The distraction works, giving Eban enough time to get away, but somehow Bo actually survives. And furious, Marlowe walks over and crushes the man's head with his boot. Okay, well, that was a pretty huge waste of time, energy, and meat shields. I mean, this whole plan pretty much fell apart as soon as they left the attic, because when they got to the store, Eban barely looked around for 2 seconds before they all let their guard down. Like, damn, son! The right move would have been to clear the building first, find an escape route in case of any trouble, and then start scavenging for, like, Twinkies and Mountain Dew. If they'd scanned for threats first, they could have snuck up on the vampire for an easy kill, or simply avoided the building if it looked too risky. But because of their mistake, Carter ended up getting squatched. And since they didn't check him for injuries after the fight, they all have no idea that he's been infected. Now, if they would have caught this sooner, there's still a chance that they could have saved his life. Whatever causes the transformation seems to work more like a parasite or virus than a supernatural curse. So if that's the case, then we might be able to treat it. I mean, what they would want to do is immediately clean the scratch with water, alcohol, or hydrogen peroxide, and then heat up something metal until it's red hot, and use it to cauterize the wound. Before going anywhere, they should have used what they could find here at the general store to arm themselves as best as they could, and using alcohol or other flammable liquids to make Molotov cocktails. But their biggest mistake was wasting the UV light, which could have been their most powerful weapon if they used it differently. Instead of blowing their cover, Eban, Bo, and Carter should have quickly and quietly snuck to the woman's house, taken the lights, and rigged them up to the sides of the tractor, turning it into a mobile tank that they could drive around and fry some vampires. Once it was ready, they could have set off the trap at the general store and taken out as many vampires as possible before regrouping at the station. Defeated, Eban returns to the station where the others are heartbroken to see that Bo did not make it, and to make matters worse, Carter finally reveals that he was injured during the fight, and it feels like he's slowly beginning to transform. The man explains that his family was killed in an accident a few years back, and he's worried that he'll never get a chance to see them in the afterlife. That's why he wants Eban to finish him off before it happens, and although the others don't want to believe it, the sheriff understands that it's probably for the best. So with that, the two men disappear into the back room, and the others hear a sickening thud as the sheriff gives him his last request. A moment later, Eban steps back into the room with a blank expression on his face, but now there's nothing that they can do besides wait for another opportunity. By now, it's been 17 whole days since the start of the attack, and while Eban's keeping watch, he notices a flashing light coming from one of the windows across the street. It's coming from his deputy Billy's house, and hoping that they can still save his life, he and Stella decide to head over there and check it out, leaving the others to wait back at the station. They make it inside without any trouble, where they find the shell-shocked deputy slumped in the corner, but looking into the bedroom, they're horrified to see his entire family lying there dead underneath the covers. It looks like he decided this was better than letting the vampires get to them first, and although they can't believe what he's done, they help the man back across the street, only to find that the others have suddenly gone missing. Stella's best guess is that they made a run for the utility plant, so without wasting any time, the three of them start making their way towards the outskirts of town. With the wind picking up, they decide to take a shelter underneath one of the buildings, but that's when they notice a little girl wandering down the street. Without thinking, Stella rushes out and pulls her back underneath the house, but as soon as she breaks from cover, one of the vampires appears from around the corner and starts heading their way. This leaves Eban with no choice but to create another distraction, giving his friends a chance to run for the plant. In the chaos, the deputy gets lost and ends up separated from the group, but instead of attacking, the vampires decide to hang back, waiting patiently for him to lead them straight to the others. After looking around to make sure that he wasn't followed, Eban sneaks into the plant through a service tunnel where he's relieved to find the others hiding inside, but there's still no sign of Stella and the girl. It isn't long before Billy finds the same tunnel and sneaks through the hatch, but this time he's followed by one of the vampires, leading it straight to where his friends are hiding. As soon as they've made it to the main chamber, the vampire leaps down from above and plunges its fangs into the man's throat. Eban rushes out and hits the creature with an axe, but it spins around and starts fighting with the rest of the group, overpowering them with its superhuman strength. Turning on the sheriff, the vampire pins him down and gets ready to slash his throat, but at the last second, Billy tackles it straight into the industrial shredder, saving his life just in time. Pulling him back, the others are horrified to see that Billy lost an entire hand to the machine, and not only that, he's already beginning to transform into one of the undead. So, without wasting time, the sheriff picks up the axe and chops off his head. Alright, that was another close call for Eban and the survivors, but after seeing the vampires use someone as bait once before, they should have expected that they would be following the little girl. Instead of immediately rushing out, a smart survivor would have held back and waited to see if she was being watched. Now, the utility plant here is connected to a bunch of tunnels that run to different parts of town, so he can use them to get as close as possible and pull Stella and the girl in without being seen and sneak back to the plant where they can hold out until sunrise. Otherwise, the backup plan is to wait until the last possible moment and then intentionally call vampires to the utility plant while his friends sneak out. Eban covers the entire place in fuel, then lights it up when the vampires take the bait and seals the exits from the outside, leaving them to burn while the sun takes out any stragglers. I mean, come on. Am I right or am I right? Later that night, Eban is beginning to lose hope when he finally gets a response from Stella explaining that they're trapped underneath a destroyed car. I mean, they won't survive out there for much longer, but the streets are still flooded with vampires, so he needs a way to reach them before it's too late. Looking outside, Denise notices that the roads are filling up with oil from a nearby pipeline, and Marlowe drops a match into the puddle, planning to burn down the entire town. Now it's only a matter of time before Stella either gets caught by the vampires or dies in the blaze, but that's when Eban finally realizes what he's gotta do. Going over to the first aid kit, he grabs a syringe and starts filling it up with blood from the deputy's body, deciding that the best way to fight the vampires is by becoming one himself. The others all stand there in shock as they watch the infection start to take over, but he's able to stay in control as he begins to transform, telling his brother to look after Stella as he goes out to confront the vampires once and for all. At first, he can barely move without almost collapsing from the pain, but it doesn't take long before he starts to figure it out. And turning around, Marlowe tells the other vampires to stand back so that he can take care of the sheriff himself. It looks like an easy kill, but he's caught by surprise when Eban rocks him straight in the face with his superhuman strength. The two of them start trading punches as Eban tries to take him down, but Marlowe smashes him against the hood of a truck and throws him down into the snow. Taking his time, he kicks the sheriff so hard that it sends him spinning across the ground, and realizing that he's outmatched, he shouts for Stella to run while she still has the chance. Picking him up, Marlowe slashes the man's face with his claws, but as he turns away, Eban gets back to his feet and charges forward, surprising the vampire as he knocks him to the ground. He manages to land a few good hits, but Marlowe eventually catches his wrist and snaps it like a toothpick, leaving him stunned from the pain. Stepping back, the vampire gets a running start and leaps into the air as he goes for the kill shot, but suddenly the sheriff reaches up and punches him so hard that his fist explodes straight through the back of his skull, killing him instantly as the other vampires look on in shock. Refusing to back down, Eban faces the crowd, ready to take them all on if he has to, but after watching him defeat their leader in a 1v1, the other vampires kind of decide to back off, disappearing into the shadows just as the sun begins to peak over the horizon. Now that it's safe, Stella comes to thank him for saving her life, but she can tell right away that he's been infected with the disease, and they both know that there's no turning back. With only a few hours left until daylight, he kind of decides that he wants to watch one last sunrise instead of transforming into one of the undead. As the other survivors start to come out of hiding, the two of them head to a ridge on the outskirts of town where they had their first date. And heartbroken, Stella pulls him in for their last kiss goodbye. Holding him close, she stays with him until the end, as the sunlight burns his body into ashes. And finally, the sheriff dies, knowing that he saved as many people as he could. But at least Stella learned one very important lesson. Next time, she better not miss her flight. 30 Days of Night. Cult classic. I actually didn't watch this one until after we peeped Sinners because I was in a vampire mood. I just needed to see more vampire movies, and this one did not disappoint. You guys, over the course of 30 days in a town, I mean, there's an endless amount of possibilities for what you guys could have done in order to survive. So if there's anything that you guys would have thought of differently that we didn't cover in today's video, you gotta let me know down in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a like and subscribe. Check out that How to Beat playlist for more videos just like this one. I'm the guy. We'll see you in the next video, and have a damn good day.